Hello everybody, Christian from Treasure Town here, and today we're going to be doing a video that I've wanted to do for quite a while, and that is taking a look at all of the versions of the $2 bill. Started out in 1862, and over 100 years later we've got some wildly different ones, but there's been a lot of steps along the way. Some really interesting minor figures appear on them, and it'll just be fun to give you an overview of how it's changed in history and recount what's been along the way. So let's get into our first note. And our first note is going to feature Alexander Hamilton, the 1862 $2 bill. And Hamilton, now a mainstay on the $10 bill, started out here. And he, for those of you who don't know, was a founding father, Secretary of the Treasury, and important part, I believe, of the Federalist Party. These notes are valued at a bottom range of around $200. That'll go up to $1,000 or more. The big thing on these prices is that a really good condition note can bring a lot more than the upper ranges that I'll be providing, or often there's different signature combinations that can make something a lot more rare than another one with a very similar design. So the upper values definitely can fluctuate. It's a legal tender note and United States note, and there were two companies printing these. It was the National Banknote Company and the American Banknote Company. One of the things is that many of these were out of circulation way before that they were collectible, so they were out and circulating, and then they were removed before people could really hold on to them with the idea of collecting them, so that's why they're relatively tougher to get. Our next one is going to be printed for a while, and it's a really unique type of note. That's what we call a lazy deuce note. 1862 to 1878. It's got Sir Walter Raleigh on the back, who was an English explorer who lived from 1552, to 1618. They're really valuable from the western states and some of the tougher to get notes. Lincoln, I assume, is Lincoln, Nebraska. That might be a tougher one to get. And then the lazy deuce, it's because the 2 is lying down. It's just a really different looking note. A lot of cool detail, really interesting. Or no, there it says Lincoln, Illinois. I should have seen that. But again, going to be made at a lot of different banks, and the 6,000 can be way more if it's from a better bank. Next up, we've got a pretty cool note. It's an 1869 legal tender $2. First time Thomas Jefferson is going to appear on it. He now is on all of the $2 bills. The value is a little higher, $300 to $3,000 and up for better condition ones, but the paper is multicolored, so a lot of people call them rainbow notes. One big thing, often I say to look for star notes. All of these notes are going to have stars on them, so that's not something that'll make it particularly valuable. And then the paper on these is actually pretty thin. Despite being kind of the cool rainbow paper, it's not the best quality. After this, we have the 1874 $2 bill, not a rainbow note. Design is not, if you look, too wildly different. Just the back has a different pattern, but there were 3 notes, 1874, 1875, and 1878, that really do look quite similar. There's a couple variations on some of the older ones, but this one ranges from about $200 to $800. Here we see 1875. I'll just switch back, almost no difference. Value on this is $200 to $1,500 and up. One quick thing though, Series A and B are a little bit more rare. And then when we move on, 1878, also Series A and B, going to be relatively rare legal tender note. This one's $150 to $3,000 plus. And that's going to be on ones where you've got the Schofield signature. So that's one to look out for when we talk about signatures. A lot of them, there will be like 5 or 6 varieties, all have the same signature, different signatures, but pretty much the same value. This one's not the case. And then as we move on, the 1880, this is going to be the last $2 legal tender note made in the 19th century. Again, featuring Thomas Jefferson. Again, a similar value in that $200 to $3,000 range. This one, though, has 3 different types of seals. So you've got the large red, large brown, and a small red seal. So different ones to look out for. There's 7 signatures. The one to look out for is the Rosencrantz and Houston signature. So that's kind of another example. Want to be checking for that one. Our next note definitely has a different appearance on the back and the front. I think it's a really cool, nifty looking one. It's a 1-year design with Winfield Scott Hancock as the person depicted, year 1886. And these are relatively valuable as well, 200 to 4,500, excuse me. Hancock is a Union general in the Civil War. He was also the Democratic nominee for president in 1880, so he could have been one of the presidents we recognize today. Instead, he's a little bit more obscure relative. This one is one of those examples, though, where there's going to be multiple varieties of signatures, 5 of them in this case, but none are going to be any more valuable than the other. No specialty, but there are some people who are completionists, try to get all of them, so might as well mention it. I really like the design on the back. It's got a neat pattern, kind of symmetric in a lot of ways. The next one is another $2 bill that's going to feature a general that we've probably heard of, but might be a little bit more obscure as well. That's going to be James McPherson. General MacPherson was in the Union Army. He was the second highest ranking Union officer to be killed in action. He was ambushed by, I believe, some Confederate soldiers, and instead of surrendering, he tried to take off when he was wounded and ended up passing away. The notes go from about $200 to $5,000 plus up to $10K. They can be quite rare in the better conditions. It's a Treasury note, 1890, and the reverse is noted as a fancy back. Another example, though, of where all of these are going to be star notes, so you don't have something extra special, but I kind of consider these notes to be pretty special if you do have one. Next is 1891, very similar McPherson obverse, but it's pretty notable how I'll just change it back. The backs really do change over just 1 year. This one is a lot cheaper than the 1890 version. I know my values are not quite, but especially at the higher range, it's just not quite as rare. $1,500 is where the better end ones start out at, range up to $3,500, maybe a little bit more. Treasury notes only made for 2 years here, 1890, 1891, and apparently the move to simplify the back was something that reduced counterfeiting. It obviously would have made it more complicated, so to avoid counterfeiting, but I'm not exactly sure how that worked. All I know is that was the reason for the move there. That brings us, though, to another really, really obscure note, 1891 William Windin silver certificate. Windin was a Minnesota politician. He was a Secretary of the Treasury under 3 presidents, I believe, kind of in this era. I don't have the exact dates, but this one is not a super popular one. I kind of really like it. I think it's cool to have people that we don't quite know as well featured on our currency, especially on the old ones. But the value, again, $300 to $1,500 and up. Another mystery as to why it's not super popular. That, though, then brings us to something that's quite famous. You've probably heard of these guys, or the notes, Robert Fulton and Samuel Morse on the back. This is what's called an educational note. They're really popular. They were designed to teach people, children, some type of message. And the last year, that red seals were on silver certificates for the $2 series. This is that time. The value is $250 to $4,000 and up, and there's no variation in value based off of what type of signature is present, but there's obviously some really solid value. Sometimes get these in the coin shop in really good conditions. These can they can range and be pretty high in value. I know it's something that you might come across more relative to most, but again, if we could get this type of design on the future bills, I think that would be really cool to beautify the American currency. Then the next up is 1899 silver certificate. It's kind of popular. It's a cool note. Another really neat design, I think. If you look at Washington, it looks like he's in a porthole of a ship, so they call it the mini porthole note. This one is a little more affordable, $75 to $2,000, but you can get some of the lower end notes for a little cheaper. And there's 10 different varieties for signatures here. Again, not much price difference. Then when we go to a really common large size $2 bill, the 1917 $2, it's got Thomas Jefferson back on there. $40 to $350. Again, significant shift downwards in terms of what the price of this note's going to be, and it's an affordable choice for people first buying currency. 4 varieties, no variance in the prices, and they were printed by the tens of the millions. Again, just a little bit more easy to access than the average one. 1918, we see some national currency. This one's really famous. A lot of people want to get their hands on this one. It's a Federal Reserve Bank note. Thomas Jefferson's on the front, but the unique thing is the back. It's got a gorgeous looking battleship. There's 29 different types, and the number varies because the different potential places that these were being made and the signatures. But again, just a really cool note. $175 to $2,000, though the notes that you'll find going for $175 are definitely not going to be in great shape. But this is a lot more expensive than the 1917. And I don't blame people for paying up for this note. The next one, though you can't see it here, is the first small size $2 bill, and that's the 1928 $2. This one definitely starts looking more like the ones we've got today. Monticello's on the reverse, so that will change. But Jefferson on the front. The value is $5 and up, so not going to be crazy valuable, but the 1928B and 28A to a lesser extent are the ones you want to be looking for. Star notes in high grades can be surprisingly valuable relative to the very low prices that you can pick up a 1928 $2 bill for. As we go along, 1953, similar, but it's just less rare, and they don't have the really expensive star notes or the expensive series numbers to look for. Value is going to range 3 and 10. Obviously, one better thing is to have consecutive runs of these or consecutive star note runs. But there were different series, 53, 53A, 53B, and 53C. I made a video on the small size $2 bills. This one, was kind of fun to focus on some of the older ones. And this is a legal tender note as well. Then as we move on, 1963 doesn't have too much different, slightly lower value. Still got Thomas Jefferson, still a legal tender note, but this was the last year for the red seals and Monticello on the back. Then we shift to what we have now, the green seal and the signing of the Declaration of Independence, Federal Reserve note, and these have been made in series from 1976 for the bicentennial to 2013. So it's kind of fun to take this survey of American $2 bill history with you guys. Be looking to make a 5, 10, 20, 50, 100 in the future, just kind of rolling these out. But it's super cool. Again, for me, I like the ones like Windin, McPherson, these lesser known people making their way onto official United States currency. That being said, I'll see you in some of my next videos.
Thanks for watching the video. I'd encourage you to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you want to get in touch with me, do so on my website, treasuretownYT.com, my Instagram, TreasureTownYT, or my Facebook, TreasureTown. I've got links in the description, and I'll see you on some of my other videos.